Hi, I'm Parker. I fix cars for a living, which means I'm pretty good at spotting when something isn't right. That skill came in handy when my nephew went missing, though I wish it hadn't. My brother Mason and I haven't been close since our 20s. He was always the successful one. Nice house in the suburbs, fancy job at some investment firm, the kind of guy who makes sure you know how much his watch costs. Meanwhile, I run my own garage downtown. Not glamorous, but honest work. 3 months ago, my 12-year-old nephew, Ethan, supposedly went to some special boarding school. At least that's what Mason told everyone at our mom's birthday dinner. So sudden? I asked, pushing my half-eaten cake aside. Ethan never mentioned wanting to switch schools. Mason barely looked up from his phone. It was a last-minute opportunity, very exclusive program. Which school again? You wouldn't know it, he snapped. It's private and very selective. Something felt off. Ethan was a good kid, smart, funny, loved video games and soccer. The kind of nephew who'd text me random car facts he found online. Then suddenly, radio silence. I tried calling the number Mason gave for the school, disconnected. When I mentioned this to my ex-wife Diana, she frowned. That doesn't sound right, Parker. Have you seen any photos of him there? None. Mason says they have a strict no phones policy. 2 weeks ago, I dropped by Mason's place unannounced, claiming I was in the neighborhood. His house was immaculate as always, too perfect, like a furniture showroom nobody actually lives in. Ethan doing okay at that school? I asked, watching his reaction. Thriving, top of his class, he answered too quickly, eyes darting toward the basement door. He's just very busy. When's he coming home to visit? Summer break. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have work calls. Yesterday was Mason's annual Memorial Day barbecue. I normally skip these things, but something kept nagging at me. The whole family was there, cousins, our aunt from Florida, even Rachel, Mason's ex-wife, and Ethan's mom. Have you heard from Ethan lately? I asked her quietly by the cooler. Rachel looked tired. Mason forwards me emails sometimes. They sound, I don't know, different. During dinner, I needed to use the bathroom. On my way back, I noticed the basement door was slightly ajar. It had always been locked before. I glanced around. Everyone was outside. I quietly descended the stairs. The main basement area looked normal. Storage boxes, old furniture, but there was another door with a heavy padlock. As I turned to leave, I heard it, a soft thump from behind that door. "Hello?" I whispered. Silence, then another thump. Back upstairs, Mason cornered me in the kitchen. "Were you in the basement?" "Just looking for the bathroom." His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Basement's off limits. I'm renovating." "Since when do you renovate anything yourself?" "Mind your own business, Parker. Some of us have actual responsibilities." I left early, but I couldn't stop thinking about that locked door. Something was very wrong in my brother's perfect house. I couldn't sleep that night. Those thumps from the basement kept echoing in my head. I called my ex-wife Diana at 6 a.m. "You think Ethan's in that basement? That's a serious accusation, Parker." "I know how it sounds, but Mason's story has holes you could drive a truck through." "What's your plan? You can't just break into his house?" "Actually, I can. He's at that conference in Chicago until tomorrow night. And I still have the emergency key from when I watched his place last year." Diana sighed. "Be careful. If you're wrong, and if I'm right." 2 hours later, I was parked down the street from Mason's house watching. Once his neighbor, Mrs. Keller, left for her daily power walk, I made my move. The house was silent and still had that weird showroom vibe. I headed straight for the basement door. The main area looked normal, but that locked door in the back practically screamed that something was wrong. The padlock was serious business, not something from the hardware store. Luckily, fixing cars teaches you things. 15 minutes with my tools, and I was in. The room behind was small, maybe 10x12. A twin mattress on the floor, a bucket in the corner, and a shelf with some crackers and water bottles. And there, huddled in the corner, was Ethan. "Uncle Parker?" His voice was barely audible. He looked like he'd lost 20 pounds, his clothes hanging off him. "Ethan, Jesus Christ." I rushed over, kneeling beside him. "Are you hurt? What happened?" "Dad said I couldn't leave until I learned my lesson." His eyes darted nervously to the door. "Is he here?" "No, buddy, he's out of town." I checked him over. No obvious injuries, but he was filthy and way too thin. "How long have you been down here?" "Since spring break." Dad got mad when I said I wanted to live with Mom. My blood boiled. 3 months. My own brother had kept his son locked in a basement for 3 months. "We're getting you out of here. Can you walk?" Ethan nodded weakly. As I helped him up the stairs, he kept looking back, terrified. He'll find me. He always does. Not this time, kid. Once upstairs, I gave him water and made a sandwich that disappeared in seconds. Then I called Detective Yates, an old high school buddy who works special victims. I need you to come to my brother's house right now and bring backup. Parker, what's going on? I found my nephew locked in a basement, the one who supposedly went to boarding school. 30 minutes later, Yates arrived with 2 officers and a social worker named Melissa. Ethan flinched when they entered but calmed down when Melissa spoke softly to him. We'll need to take him to the hospital, she said. Get him checked out. Yates pulled me aside. This is serious, Parker. We'll need statements, evidence. You should have called before entering. And risk Mason moving him? Not a chance. We were still talking when Mason's BMW screeched into the driveway. He burst through the front door, freezing at the sight of police officers and Ethan wrapped in a blanket on the couch. What the hell is this? His eyes locked on me with pure hatred. Parker, what have you done? Found your secret, Mason. Mason's face transformed instantly. His voice turned concerned as he addressed Yates. Detective, my brother has been having episodes, paranoid delusions. He broke into my home. Ethan was supposed to be at school. I need to understand what's happening. So you're saying this isn't your son? Yates asked. Of course it's my son, but he should be at Westbrook Academy. Parker must have... Stop lying, Ethan suddenly shouted. You locked me down there. You said Mom didn't want me anymore. Mason's mask slipped for just a second. It was enough. Mason tried to recover, but the damage was done. Yates ordered one of the officers to separate them while Melissa stayed with Ethan. I want my mom, Ethan said, his voice stronger now. We're contacting her right now, Melissa assured him. While the paramedics checked Ethan over, Yates pulled me outside. Your brother's claiming you planted the kid there to frame him. Says you've always been jealous. Are you serious? Did you see that room? The lock was on the outside. I'm just telling you what we're dealing with. Mason's already called his lawyer. 2 hours later at the hospital, Rachel burst through the emergency room doors. I'd never seen someone look so terrified and angry at the same time. Where is he? Where's my baby? I led her to Ethan's room. When she saw him, thin and pale in that hospital bed, she collapsed against the doorframe. Oh God, Ethan. He looked up, his eyes filling with tears. Mom, Dad said you didn't want me anymore. What? No, never. He told me you were at school. He showed me emails. While they reunited, Diana arrived carrying a file folder. She'd always been the organized one, even after our divorce. I pulled the trust documents, she whispered, pulling me aside. Diana worked as a paralegal at a family law firm. Ethan inherited money from Rachel's father. It's in trust until he's 18, but Mason is the trustee. How much are we talking? Almost $2 million. And get this, there's a clause that if Ethan is deemed mentally unfit, control extends indefinitely. So locking him up was probably step 1 in having him declared incompetent. Yates joined us in the hallway. We found something interesting on Mason's computer. Fake emails supposedly from Ethan at this boarding school, and drafts of psychological evaluations. He was setting him up, I said. Can I see my son now? Mason's voice echoed down the hall. He stood with a slick-looking attorney in an expensive suit. You've got some nerve, Rachel emerged from Ethan's room. You monster! You told me he was at school while you had him locked in a basement. Rachel, this is all a misunderstanding. Parker has manipulated this situation. Save it, Yates interrupted. We have the evidence from your house, the fake emails, the doctored school records. Mason's lawyer stepped forward. My client has no comment at this time. Later that evening, after Ethan fell asleep with Rachel by his side, Diana and I worked with Yates on a plan. He's careful, Diana said. We need something concrete. What about a wire? Get him to admit what he did? Yates nodded. Could work, but it has to be someone he might actually confess to. The next morning, Mason called me from the police station after posting bail. Parker, this has gone too far. Meet me at the Grand Hotel bar. Just you and me, we can sort this out. I agreed, and Yates set me up with a wire. When I arrived, Mason was already nursing a scotch. You really screwed me this time, he said, surprisingly calm. Me? You locked your own kid in a basement? Keep your voice down. He glanced around the upscale bar. Look, this can all go away. Ethan's fine, just a little discipline that got out of hand. A little discipline? He was starving. Mason leaned in, lowering his voice. The money, that's what this is really about, right? I can cut you in, 20% of the trust. You're trying to bribe me with your son's money? 50% then, just tell them you misunderstood the situation. And what about Ethan? What's your plan for him? He needs special care. Troubled kid, you know? I've got connections to facilities that can help manage him. Manage him until the money's gone, Mason smirked. Until he's better. However long that takes. What he didn't know was that Yates and two officers were listening in the next room. They stepped out just as Mason started explaining exactly how he'd faked the boarding school records. Mason Reynolds, you're under arrest for additional charges of attempted bribery of a witness. The look on Mason's face as they led him away was almost worth everything he'd put Ethan through. Almost. The preliminary hearing came fast after Mason's arrest. He sat there in his expensive suit looking annoyed while his attorney whispered in his ear. The state is charging Mason Reynolds with child endangerment, false imprisonment, child abuse, attempted fraud, and obstruction of justice, the prosecutor announced. After court, Rachel approached me. I need time to heal. Would you take Ethan temporarily? Of course, as long as he needs. When we got to my apartment above the garage, Ethan looked around. It's not fancy like your dad's place. I like it. It smells like cars and pizza. Two of the best smells in the world, kid. Ethan started therapy 3 times a week. Some nights he'd wake up screaming, thinking he was back in that basement. My phone rang with a call from county jail. What do you want, Mason? I put it on speaker. I want to talk to my son. I'm right here, Ethan said, voice steady. Ethan, buddy, this is all a misunderstanding. I was just trying to protect you. Ethan's hands started shaking. No, it's not. You locked me up. You told me Mom didn't want me. That's not what happened. I remember everything. I took the phone. He doesn't want to talk to you. Don't call again. Mason took a plea deal. 5 years with possibility of parole in 3. We agreed to spare Ethan from testifying, but I visited Mason one last time. Thank you for coming, Parker. After this is over, we can rebuild. Let me be clear. There is no after this is over for you and us. Ethan is never going to be alone with you again. He's my son. The trust has a new trustee, Rachel. Your friends know what you did. Your firm fired you. Your life as you knew it is over. I'm still your brother. Not anymore. Brothers don't do what you did. 6 months later, Ethan was doing better. He joined soccer and Rachel was back on her feet. We worked out a co-parenting arrangement. A letter arrived from prison. Ethan handed it to me. You want to read it? No, he doesn't get to say anything to me anymore. We threw the unopened letter in the backyard fire pit and roasted marshmallows while it burned. You okay, kid? I asked as the paper curled into ash. Ethan nodded, smiling. Yeah, I'm home. What would you have done with Mason's letter from prison? Would you have read it first to see if he showed genuine remorse, or burned it immediately like Parker and Ethan did? Where do you draw the line between offering family a chance at redemption and protecting yourself from toxic people who've proven they can't be trusted? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of justice and healing, hit that like button and subscribe for more compelling stories that make you think. Your support helps our channel grow, and we'd love to hear your perspective.